If you've ever played the first Slay the Spire and thought to yourself, damn, this game is perfect, but what if it had better art, more cards, more enemies, was more fun, and I could play it with a friend?
If I had one!
Well then, whoa boy. Start calling yourself a disappointed Mrs. Claus, because Santa came early this year. Now I'm sure some of you clicked on the video with your pitchfork sharpened, waiting to see what I had to say about Magic the Gathering. Well, let me introduce you to something we in the industry like to call clickbait. I have no qualms against Magic, don't worry, but you really should play this game, because holy fish fuck is it epic. Simply put, if you enjoy phenomenal card games, or want to try something that isn't the same recycled hero shooter slop for the 1 gajillionth time, then you owe it to yourself to give this game a shot. In fact, I would never recommend doing coke to anyone. But if you did ever want to live on the wild side of life and see what it's like, then stop being a nerd and play this high-octane card game like everyone else is.
Drugs are bad, okay?
Even though it's still in early access, it's basically the first game but better in almost every conceivable way. And you'd be hard-pressed to find another game in this genre that can keep pushing you to drastically fuck up your sleep cycle for one last run the way this game can. Sure, others like Monster Train, Vault of the Void, Marvel's Midnight Suns, and many more have tried, and don't get me wrong, I love every single one of them too. But Slay the Spire is king for a reason, baby.
Hail to the king, baby.
First of all, and quite frankly my favorite set of improvements to the game, are all the artistic changes, redesigns, and additions they've made. It's fucking fantastic, and everything feels so much more active and alive. For starters, hero portraits feel dynamic now thanks to some added kick-ass particle effects. I also really like that they updated the character designs in a subtle yet noticeable way. All of them are instantly recognizable, but at the same time all nicely show that time has progressed from the first game to the second. It's a subtle touch, but a really thoughtful one that adds a sense of weight and continuity from the first game. In contrast to that point though, while most of the character designs were more interesting than the first, I really did not like the updated Ironclad at all.
What the fuck is that?
I understand it's a continuation of his journey, and so naturally more armor makes sense, but the execution is abysmal in my opinion. I mean, he looks like he's doing a shitty budget cosplay of a Redoran guard from the Dragonborn DLC of Skyrim. Continuing on with the trend of meaningful but respectful changes, all of the card designs have been significantly improved and are incredibly fun to look at, especially the full art ones.
Slow down, baby.
I love that they managed to retain the spirit of the cards from the original, but still updated them to look even more visually appealing and match the quality of those that were newly added. One small quibble I had though, is that I was a little heartsore to see they removed Baldy from the anger card and instead replaced him with an image that didn't accurately reflect what I do to my meat on a regular basis. It just didn't feel as personal, you know? But shifting on to the next artistic point, the in-game animations are also significantly better in the sequel. Cards now have dynamic effects displayed on the screen that actually match what is being played, rather than just overlaying visual effects with a slight model movement. Using a strike now has your character actually hit the enemy. Getting shrunk by an enemy makes your character model smaller, and so on and so forth. It's so tremendously satisfying from a visual standpoint to see your cards actually show tangible actions in the game, and this is probably one of the things I love the most in the sequel. Even things like rocks falling when an enemy hits you with a big attack, or the death animations they added for when you kill enemies, all add to a more lively and polished feel to the game. I know these all seem like inconsequential details that wouldn't stand out tremendously to you, but I mean, it's a fucking card game, bro. A bit of visual oomph really goes a long way. And besides, the core gameplay loop already works incredibly well, so these improvements all transcended into a higher state of existence than just being a high-octane card game. Not only are the art and effects more dynamic, but the gameplay is too. The combat follows the exact same trend of familiar excellence you know and love, but changed in a lot of meaningful ways. I mentioned earlier how your character model gets physically shrunk from a certain effect, and that is just one of the many new status effects they've added or updated. In my 150 hours of playtime in the first game, things kinda got a little formulaic up until the highest ascension levels. But in this game, there are so many enemies with so many effects and playstyles to deal with that you really have to be as flexible as possible. You might be stomping for the first 2 acts, get to the 3 knights in Act 3, and get absolutely shat on because Mr. Fuckhead Spectral Knight over here ruined your playstyle with his dorky Turbo Virgin Ethereal Status effect nonsense. Moving on though, I've definitely noticed the game is somewhat of an awkward balancing problem right now. On the one hand, I've seen many experienced players say it's significantly easier to go infinite in this game, and that higher ascension runs are much more forgiving. But on the other hand, I can personally attest to, and have seen significantly more people who are not as experienced complained about how much harder this game is for them than the first. Don't get me wrong, I love a challenge, and I understand the game is technically in early access, but certain enemies, like the queen who fucking ruins so many different playstyles in a tedious and unfun way, the hunter killer who is absolutely not balanced to be a regular hallway enemy, not even in your wildest dreams bro, and that stupid dogshit dumb mouth-breathing troglodyte Spectral Knight can all sit on a cactus and spin until they turn into colon soup. Again, the game is fun, and I do appreciate the challenge, but quite a few fights do feel incredibly unfair without the right setup, or leaning into the infinite spam that so many people are resorting to. And I really hope this doesn't eventually turn into another franchise that appeals to the extremely niche, hyper-dedicated part of the fanbase over the majority of players. And before you start whinging like a stale and musty old fart, I'm not saying I want the game to be significantly easier, just to be a little bit more balanced on a few of the newer enemy additions. The last point I'll mention towards the gameplay is that events are so much more interesting and fair this time round. In the first game, I really felt like any event had a 50-50 chance of just straight up griefing my run, to the point where I would usually either sprint through them in Act 1 and risk an early loss, or be an absolute and wait until the final act when I felt fully confident my run could handle any potential nonsense. But in Slay the Spire 2, the events not only look much better, but they usually feel like they have more balanced and rewarding outcomes than the first. I often intentionally go down a string of them just to push my luck, and even when the event is frustrating to contend with, it's usually compensated with some sort of reward. Either as a direct trade-off then, or later down the line. But fuck bridges though. All my homies hate bridges. Unfortunately, like I mentioned before, my parents didn't exactly socialize me very well as a kid, and so none of my friends are cool enough to play this game with me. As a side note though, and for no particular reason, don't tell your kid that emulating Austin Powers is a good way to make friends at the age of 8. Yeah, baby, yeah! Trust me, they will get bullied. Or so I've been told. From what I've heard though, the multiplayer experience is incredibly fun and rewarding, and if it's anything like the board game, which I have played, then I know that it will be a tremendously fun experience for everyone involved. And the last point worth mentioning is the new characters they've added, which I would argue are quite a mixed bag to say the least. I'll start with the Regent who, in my opinion, is an incredibly disappointing addition, and completely underwhelming compared to the other 6 characters that have existed in the franchise. He's easily the hardest character to make work, and requires way too much setup to get online, often taking until the end of the 3rd act to feel the way that most characters do by the beginning of the 2nd. Worse still, his forging mechanic is probably the most conceptually badass in the entire series, but is so frustratingly bad compared to his other already weak playstyles that you either need a perfect run for it to work, or simply use it as a byproduct of his other cards. And again, I want to reiterate, the reason this is so incredibly frustrating is because wielding a giant cosmic greatsword is so fucking badass that it really sucks not being able to rely on it to actually make any sort of meaningful progression consistently. Conversely though, if the Regent was a Homer Simpson tipped screwdriver in terms of how useful it is, then the Necrobinder would be a pair of self-walking shoes. She's incredibly easy to use. In fact, I might argue she's a little too easy to use and feels incredibly reminiscent of the Watcher from the first. I mean, they even look the same, so it does feel kinda serendipitous, but I digress. In my first run, I didn't even fully grasp what her playstyle was, which is incredibly fucking interesting by the way, and I still managed to easily finish the run with only taking damage like twice or maybe 3 times. Compare that to the Regent, who I've spent like 11 attempts trying to get to work, and often get mogged in the first act to normal enemies. I really like that unlike most other characters, her cards all have very good solo value in spite of the deck you're building. You can easily slot in a few Doom cards into an Otzi deck and vice versa. I don't know if that's because things are overtuned, or if she's simply a perfectly designed character, but I really like that about her. Either way, both characters should probably be tweaked a little bit for balance, but I definitely think Regent needs quite a lot more time in the oven to cook properly, because he does feel quite shitty to play. With all that said though, I really urge you to try this game if you have the money and opportunity to do so. It's a testament to the growing trend of smaller studios making games that vastly outperform those bloated slop merchants who keep giving us the same predatory shit nobody asked for. And Megacrit really deserves all the recognition and money going their way. Anyways, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe to get more videos like this in the future. Hell, maybe even share it with your mates if you think they'd enjoy it. Either way, until next time, I'm out and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.